another round of peace talks for South Sudan. They're due to take place in Ethiopia from Thursday. Now, in the past, these negotiations have failed, and there are concerns that the conflict in the country is set to drag on. Mediators are calling on South Sudan's rival sides not to waste this opportunity for lasting peace. CGTN's Patick Oyet has more from the capital, Juba.
This round of discussions in Addis Ababa is designed to try and rejuvenate the 2015 peace process. It comes at a time when South Sudan's army and armed opposition groups are accusing each other of violating the country's cessation of hostilities agreement. The government claims a new armed group loyal to former Army Chief Paul Malong has been attacking its positions, and so ahead of Thursday's talk, Juba's residents are cautious about what can be achieved in Ethiopia.
The very big gap I show in the negotiation is a very big gap. But the opposition they don't need the two states. Opposition don't need the army to be there. This thing cannot happen. But we need that to come down, to sit down. We don't need two army in this time when they are going to agree on this Ababa. Let them to be one army.
We are encouraging our politicians and our government officials and also the opposition to bring peace to the South. Because now in the business sector, there's nothing going on. Because private sector cannot go on without peace.
The talks are due to include representatives from South Sudan's government, armed opposition groups, other opposition groups, former detainees, civil societies, women and youth groups. Former Vice President and opposition leader Riek Machar is also expected to send a delegation to the Revitalization Forum. However, some armed opposition groups, such as the one loyal to former Army Chief Paul Malong, is not included in the talks, and that's one of the key challenges for Intergovernmental Authority on Development Mediators, accommodating all interested parties as new groups keep emerging. Patick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Well, let's get you more perspective on these talks and the possibility of peace in South Sudan. I'm joined in studio by Dr. Francis Onditi, an international relations expert. Doctor, another round of peace talks, another chance for peace in South Sudan, or perhaps not. Do you expect anything concrete to come out of this latest round of talks?
The talks in South Sudan is likely to succeed, but I think there is a condition that all the stakeholders must be put on board or on the table, particularly Dr. Riek Machar, very important, is one of the protagonists, but he's been away for a long time. So the peace of South Sudan is basically very much related to how much President Salva Kiir is going to accommodate and appreciate other groups that are protagonists in this conflict, particularly Dr. Riek Machar, who is actually in exile. So if that is done, the discussion that is going on in South Africa, the shuttle diplomacy, trying to bring together the ideas that Riek has, together with what Machar has, I think that will pave the way for the peace. Otherwise, if some parties are left out, it's going to be quite difficult. We are likely to see another circle of maybe people having a strong stance that they're not going to bend if ABCD is not going to be done. Yeah.
And of course, we see in countries like the United States and international organizations like the United Nations or IGAD all expressing a sense of frustration, losing their patience essentially with South Sudan. Why do you think this particular conflict has been so difficult to resolve?
You know, South Sudan and stakeholders, particularly the regional bodies, IGAD, had an opportunity because they were basically using what we call, you know, the concessional power sharing kind of model, which has applied in other places. But I think the challenge that was there was when they lost Dr. Riek Machar. Don't forget that the conflict in South Sudan is largely controlled by, you know, the ethnic divisions and the resource tensions. So the best they would have done, IGAD and other stakeholders would have been to make sure that Riek Machar does not get away from the equation. Because don't forget, you know, the community that he controls is about 16% of the population. That is the Nuer. and therefore he has a stake. And initially, you remember when the conflict broke some times back in 2015, you know, it was about the faction that are loyal to Riek Machar and those that are loyal to Salva Kiir.
Do you think then, from that perspective, whether or not the deal itself might be problematic? I mean, it hasn't been fully implemented. There's been ongoing crises and fresh clashes. Do you think that there's something essentially about this deal that needs to be revisited?
Yeah. Obviously, one of the good things that was done by IGAD was to set up what we call the JMAC, which has been led by the former president in one of the South African countries, that is Festus. He did a good job, you know, the Joint Monitoring and Evaluation Commission. But I think what they did not do was to make sure that as they monitor the conflict, they make sure that everybody is put together. Their ideas and their tensions are considered moving through the journey. So that was not done. This time around, perhaps what they may want to do is to ensure that the different groups that have come, maybe taking the place of Riek Machar, are put together, and perhaps they try to find a way of revisiting the concessional power sharing, which means that they need to develop a formula that will allow the different factions to have a stake in national, you know, in national cake, what we can call the national cake. Maybe we need another handshake.
Another handshake, indeed. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Francis Onditi, with some analysis there, indeed, on a conflict that has been dragging on for years.